My wife leaned across me and put her hand on my forearm and said 4 words so quietly, I almost didn't catch them. Make him stop talking. My father was 2 sentences into explaining how the old knob and tube wiring in the theater had been spliced wrong during a renovation 40 years back, and how you'd had to know which breakers ran which circuits or the whole north wing would trip on a Tuesday in January. He was explaining it because somebody at the table had asked. She had asked. Constance Albright, whose family's name was on the donor wall in the lobby, had asked my father how he knew so much about the building. My father was answering. That's what he does. He answers. My name is Stuart Reeves. I'm 52 years old. I own a small electrical contracting company in Millbrook, North Carolina, and I've been a member of the Millbrook Heritage Society by marriage for 11 years. The night of the Heritage Society Spring Gala, my wife was 3 weeks away from a board vote that would make her president. The room was important to her. Every table was important to her. My father, 76 years old, born in San Salvador, El Salvador, speaking English with an accent that hasn't softened once in 43 years in this country, was not helping. I put 2 fingers on his forearm. He stopped. He looked at me. He understood. He picked up his water glass and set it down carefully and looked at the tablecloth. Constance said, Well, that's fascinating. The way people say things they have already stopped thinking about. She turned to her left and started talking about the Restoration Committee's new curtains. I looked across the table. My daughter Petra, 13 years old in a blue dress she'd complained about for a week, was staring at her salad plate. She hadn't looked up once. I told myself I needed air. I walked out through the side door and stood in the parking lot for 4 minutes. Then I walked back in. I did not ask my father how he knew which breaker controlled which circuit in a building that had been restored 27 years ago. I did not ask, because asking would have meant admitting I should have asked a long time ago, and I wasn't ready for what that admission cost. My father came to the United States in 1981. He was 34 years old. He came alone and found a room above a hardware store in Charlotte, and got a job on a framing crew within 2 weeks, because he knew how to read a level, and he showed up every day and never complained about anything. Those are the facts I grew up with. He didn't talk about El Salvador, and I didn't ask. He had a story the way a wall has a history. You could tell something happened, but the details were behind the plaster. What I knew, he worked construction for 6 years, then moved into electrical work, then took his journeyman exam in 1987 and his master electrician license in 1991. He built a one-man operation out of a truck until I was old enough to work beside him, and then it became Reeves Electrical. 12 employees now, a 40-minute wait list for residential service. His name is still on the license. He stepped back 8 years ago. He gardens. He goes to mass on Sundays. He makes pupusas from scratch for any gathering where someone needs food, whether they asked him to bring food or not. My wife Monica used to love that about him. I want to be clear about that, because the end of this story makes her sound like someone she wasn't, at least, not at the beginning. When we met, she was 27, working as an office manager for a real estate firm, driving a 10-year-old Civic and renting a room in East Millbrook. She was the sharpest person I had ever sat across from at a dinner table. She read rooms the way a contractor reads blueprints. Fast, precise, nothing missed. The first time my father brought pupusas to our apartment, she ate 4 of them and asked him for the recipe and wrote it on a sticky note that lived on our refrigerator for a year. I still know where that year ended. I just couldn't name the exact day while it was happening. By the year of the gala, Monica was 2 terms on the Heritage Society board, chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, and the presumptive next president. She had spent 11 years building something real, and I was proud of her for it. But somewhere along the way, my father had become a variable in her accounting. Not a person. His accent was unpredictable. His stories ran long. He did not know which forks were which. He was not the image of the family she was presenting to Constance Albright and the donors who wrote the checks. I found out how far that accounting had gone on a Tuesday afternoon in March, 6 weeks after the gala. I was looking for our homeowner's insurance binder. Monica keeps documents in the filing cabinet in the den. I opened the 3rd drawer. The binder wasn't there, but a folder was, labeled Heritage Society Centennial Tribute, Family Profiles. I opened it because my name was on the tab. Inside was a 2-page write-up. It described me as a 3rd-generation Carolinian, which is what I am on my mother's side. It mentioned the company. It mentioned my years volunteering with the society. My mother, who passed in 2019, was described warmly and with detail. My father appeared in one sentence. Stuart's father, a retired tradesman, immigrated from Central America and settled in the Charlotte area in the early 1980s. Retired tradesman. I read it twice. I put it back exactly as I found it. I stood in the hallway for a while. Then I went to the garage. My father left a box of his work papers with us when he moved to the smaller house 5 years ago. It's been on the second shelf behind the lawn edger since then. I had never opened it. The first thing I found was a diploma. Universidad de El Salvador, Facultad de Ingeniería y Arquitectura. Ingeniería Civil, 1972. His full name in type and his signature in ink below it. Younger and more angular than the signature I've seen on birthday cards my whole life. I sat down on the garage floor. Underneath the diploma were two things folded together. His journeyman's card from 1987, his master electrician's license, State of North Carolina, issued 1991. I knew about these. What I did not know about was the letter underneath them. City of Millbrook letterhead. Dated June 3rd, 1999. Signed by the mayor. Dear Mr. Reeves, on behalf of the City of Millbrook and the Civic Theater Restoration Committee, I want to express our deep appreciation for your extraordinary contribution to the preservation of the Millbrook Civic Theater. Your expertise in diagnosing and resolving the complex integration of original 1920s wiring infrastructure with modern electrical systems was invaluable, and frankly, beyond what our contracted engineers believed was solvable without gutting the entire north wing at a cost the project could not sustain. Because of your work, the theater will open this fall with its original character intact. The city is grateful. The letter was folded in thirds. It had been folded in thirds for 25 years. No frame, no display, just in the box. I drove to my father's house. He was in the backyard pulling weeds from between the tomato cages. He didn't look up when he heard me come through the gate. I held the letter out without saying anything. He wiped his hands on his pants and took it. He looked at it for a long time. Then he looked at me. Tell me about the theater. He sat down on the low concrete border around the garden bed, with the letter in both hands, and he told me. The Millbrook Civic Theater was built in 1924. By 1995, it was in bad shape, and the city launched a restoration project. The electrical system was the problem nobody wanted to solve. The original knob and tube wiring ran through plaster walls that the Preservation Committee wouldn't allow anyone to cut. Every licensed electrician they brought in said the same thing. Full gut job, no other option. Cost estimate was $600,000 above the project budget. The committee was 2 weeks from approving the gut when my father, who had been doing routine maintenance work at the building on a separate city contract, asked if he could look at the blueprints. They let him look because they had nothing to lose. It took him 6 weeks. He mapped every circuit by hand, cross-referenced against the original 1924 drawings from the city archive, figured out which of the old runs were still viable and which needed bypass. He designed a secondary distribution panel that integrated with the original system, using modern junction work inside the existing conduit channels. The Preservation Committee's chief engineer called it unbuildable. My father built it anyway. He did it after hours, on weekends, for standard labor rate with no markup for the complexity. When it was done, the north wing worked, and the original plaster was untouched. The theater opened in the fall of 1999. It has been the venue for the Heritage Society's Spring Gala every year since. Dad, were you an engineer in El Salvador? He nodded once, like a man confirming a fact that shouldn't need confirming. Civil engineering, 6 years at the university, 2 years of practice after. He straightened the letter along its original folds. When I came here, they said my degree didn't transfer, I would have to start again. 4 years of school, then the licensing exams. He set the letter on the garden wall beside him. I had no money for 4 years of school. I had a small son. I couldn't speak. You passed the master electrician exam. Yes. He looked at the tomatoes. It is not the same as engineering, but it was what I could do. I did not find it shameful. I found it the next available thing. Do you know your name is on the theater? He looked at me steadily. There's a plate in the lobby, on the donor wall. I told him I had walked past that wall 100 times and never once read it. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said he knew. The city had put it there without telling him. An electrical inspector mentioned it in passing, years later. He went to look once, by himself on a weekday morning when the building was empty. It was very small, he said. He said it without bitterness, the way you described the weather. I want to stop here and say something, because it is the only honest way to tell this. It was not Monica who taught me to look past my father. She finished the work, but I started it. I was 12 years old the first time I told a friend that my grandfather built bridges, because I wanted something that sounded large, because my father is an electrician, didn't feel like enough. He was standing 10 feet away. I don't know if he heard me. I never asked. I let 40 years go by without asking my father what he did before he came here. The folder in the filing cabinet was Monica's version of what I'd been doing quietly for decades. I have to own that before I tell you what happened next. If you're watching this and there's someone in your life you stopped asking about, stop and ask. I mean it. Leave me a comment. Tell me one thing you wish you'd said. I'll read everyone. The Heritage Society annual meeting was 6 weeks after I found the box. Monica was scheduled to be formally voted in as president. The meeting was at the Civic Theater. It's always at the Civic Theater. I asked Petra to come with me. She said okay. She asked if Grandpa was coming. I said yes. She said good, in a tone that wasn't a question or a comment, just a landing, like something had been decided. My father wore the sport coat he bought in 2001. It still fit him. He brought papooses wrapped in foil. Constance Albright said, from about 8 feet away, without quite looking at him, that he was so thoughtful and that they'd have the kitchen staff take those to the back. My father said thank you very quietly. Petra walked over and took the foil package out of his hands. She set it on the registration table between the name tags and the programs. She said, clearly enough for the whole entrance hall to hear, my grandfather made those, they stay here. Then she came back and stood beside him. Constance looked at Monica. Monica looked at the floor. I looked at my daughter. She was looking at the ceiling. Before I tell you what I said next, hit the like button. Not for me. For every person who built something in this country and got a 6-inch plate nobody read for 25 years. The meeting opened with committee reports. 30 minutes in, the outgoing president asked for any remarks before the vote. I stood up. Monica's face went very still in the way. Faces go still when someone is holding them there deliberately. I want to talk about the building, I said. Nobody told me to sit down. I said I had lived in Millbrook my whole life and been a member of this society for 11 years, and had never once, not one single time, read the donor wall in the lobby. I asked for 3 minutes to fix that. The outgoing president nodded. I walked down the center aisle. 40 people followed me out into the lobby. My father walked at the back. Petra had her hand inside his elbow. The donor wall is on the left as you come in. The large plaques are at eye level. The Albrights, the founding families, the capital campaign donors from 2010. Down on the lower right, about knee height if you're not looking for it, there is a small plate, 6 inches wide. The bronze has gone the color of a very old penny. I crouched down and read it aloud. Electrical Systems Restoration, Millbrook Civic Theater, 1999. Donated in kind by E. Reeves, Master Electrician, Millbrook, NC. Then I stood up. E. Reeves is my father, I said. He's been standing in this lobby at every gala for 11 years. Not one of us, including me, has ever read that plate. Nobody moved. In 1997, the Restoration Committee was 2 weeks away from gutting this building's interior to replace the electrical system at a cost of $600,000 that would have ended the project. I was not looking at notes. I was not looking at my wife. My father looked at the 1924 drawings and found a way to run the new distribution panel through the existing conduit without cutting a single wall. The engineer of record called it unbuildable. My father built it. He did it for standard labor rate. He did it on weekends. Before he came to this country, he had a degree in civil engineering. He couldn't use it here. So he got the next available license, and he spent 40 years doing the next available thing. And somewhere in all of that, he saved this building. The lobby was completely quiet. There's a letter, I said, from the mayor. June 1999. I found it in a box in my garage 6 weeks ago. It's been folded in thirds this whole time. I took it out of my jacket pocket and read it to them. All of it. I read the part about what the engineers said couldn't be done. I read the part about the north wing opening, with its original plaster intact. When I finished, a man I barely knew put his hand flat against the wall next to the plate, like he was checking it was real. I looked for my father. He was at the back of the group, near the door, where he always stands in any room he's not sure he belongs in. Petra had moved closer to him. "Would you like to say anything?" I asked him. He shook his head slowly, looking at the plate. "He doesn't need to," Petra said. She said it quietly, but the lobby is not a large room and everyone heard her. "He builds things. That's what he does." They're still standing. One person began to clap, then several more. By the time it was fully going, my father was looking at the floor and his jaw was set in the particular way. Jaws set when a person has decided not to cry in public. The vote for society president was postponed to the following month. The conversation, Monica and I needed to have waited 3 days, until Petra was at school and the kitchen was quiet. It was not easy, and it was not short, and it did not resolve everything in one sitting. And if I'm being honest, it did not resolve everything at all. But for the first time in a very long time, I said the thing that was actually true, instead of the thing that cost the least. I don't know yet where that ends. I know how most of it has ended so far. 2 months later, the Heritage Society installed a new plate next to the old one, at eye level. On a small panel of walnut that came from a mill about 40 minutes east of here, my father came to the ceremony. He brought pupusas. The outgoing president ate 2 of them and asked him for the recipe and wrote it on the back of her program. Before the ceremony started, a girl about 8 years old found him standing by the wall, looking at the plates. She pointed at his name. "Is that you?" she asked. My father crouched down so his eyes were level with hers. He always does that with children. I used to find it embarrassing when I was young. I used to find a lot of things about him embarrassing. I was wrong about all of them, and I am saying so 40 years late, and he has never once made me feel the lateness of it. "Yes," he said. "What did you do?" He thought about it the way he thinks before he answers a child. Slowly, like the answer deserves the time it takes to find it. "I looked at something everyone said was broken," he said. "And I kept looking until I found the part that wasn't." The girl looked at the new plate, then at the ceiling, then back at him. "My father's name has been on that wall for 25 years. It just took us that long to stand at the right height to read it."